Finally, after praying to the heavens and Lord Sephiroth himself, Honkai Star Rail has delivered the end of Hypercarry. Well, not the literal end of Hypercarry, but this is definitely the most direct way of saying bring both versions of Goku to a gunfight. An absolute tank of a support who's not afraid to break a lot of bones and simply gorgeous while doing it. Madame Ruan Mei is here, and in this video, I'll show you exactly how to make the most out of her E0 break potential, create even stronger delays against the enemy, her most ideal gear sets, best teams to build, and I'll even give you my honest thoughts about her place in the meta. If you're interested about whether or not Ruan Mei is worth the chase, this video has got you covered.
A mess. Where is the home I miss? Only remembered in drunken bliss.
First off, I want to show you Mei's focus around break effect and the potential it has for the entire team. This doesn't mean she won't do any damage, in fact, far from it. What it means is that all of her true unresisted damage will come from breaking the enemy. For the majority of this guide, she will be equipped with her signature light cone, past self, and mirror. And while I'm using her signature light cone because I love the way it looks, most of you might not find the most value in this and instead give her memories of the past. Keep in mind it needs to be S5 in order to give her the equivalent damage as well as a 3-turn ultimate, but I'll get into that later on in the video. A full 4-piece thief set, Talia's planar ornaments with talents all being 888, and of course she's Eidolon 0. The main attraction to her kit is the break effect. Everything about this stat Ruan Mei influences in some way, shape, or form, whether that be a raw 20% increase to break effect she gives to the entire team, or the other talent that greatly increases the damage output your team receives based on her own break effect. Since there's a lot to tackle, I'll do my best to break down everything one step at a time. Let's start off with her skill, which might be the easiest to explain. Doing this activates Overtone, which is going to last for 3 turns, increasing all allies' damage up to 32% and weakness break efficiency by 50%. The duration only decreases at the start of her turn, which is very important. The first part being the damage increase isn't just single target like Teen Yoon's, for example. That means everyone on the team has a somewhat permanent damage increase for anything they do. Basic attacks, skills, ultimates, DOTs, doesn't matter. Whatever action results in damage, Ruan Mei is going to buff it. I'll also take the time to add that 32% I mentioned earlier isn't all she adds. Thanks to one of the talents I mentioned, she can basically turn that damage increase into nearly 70% just by reaching 180% break effect. And guys, I promise you, it's not that much, trust me. Do you understand how close to doubling your damage that is? The second part of the skill is increasing the weakness break efficiency of everyone by 50%. Whatever your attack did to the toughness meter originally, Mei adds another half of that to the bar. For basic attacks, this might not seem like much, but when you start noticing how easily you'll be able to interrupt enemies during their power attacks thanks to your ultimate doing 1/3 of their bar, you'll thank me later. Second up is her talent, Somatotypical Helix. By activating her curse technique, she helps everyone else on the team by increasing their speed up to 10%. Unfortunately, it doesn't include her, so you will need to make a choice between tuning her to be the fastest on the team or the slowest. There are some Von Quack specific setups you can do with the slow build, but I'll get into that later if we have the time. Even though Mei doesn't give herself a speed increase, she still finds a way to bring more value to the team. Whenever a weakness break happens, she will immediately deal up to 120% of her own break damage to that same enemy. The beauty in this is that there is no limit. If you break all 5 enemies on the field at once, she will hit all 5 of them for the same break damage at once. Even better is this also applies to her own breaks. If Mei is the one breaking the enemy, which she should be doing that as often as possible, then you'll notice her breaks have 2 cyan colored numbers popping up instead of 1. Finally, we get to her ultimate, which is literally a 2-turn domain expansion. It increases all type resistance penetration for all allies up to 25% while applying this effect called Rebloom on hit. When an enemy attempts to recover from weakness break, Rebloom triggers and delays them again by 20% of Ruan Mei's break effect and an additional 10%, while also dealing break damage equal to 50% of her break attack. I know that's a lot of percentages, but just try to keep up with me. Rebloom can't be stacked. Simple enough to understand. Yeah? Nah, probably not. This is where things get a little complicated, so grab a pen and paper. Before I go over the Rebloom, I need to briefly explain the all-type resistance penetration and just how unmatched of a buff this actually is. Nobody else in the game comes close to doing anything like this. at least not for the entire team, let alone multiple turns. On the screen is in-game footage of both Dan Heng and Zila attacking an enemy with their own respective penetration buffs. No other debuffs applied. Now this is what that looks like inside of Ruan Mei's domain. That is consistently at its worst a 1.28 times unresisted damage increase. The enemy can't ignore this and neither can you. From there, I can break down the rebloom effect and what makes it so dangerous. I'll use the Malefic Ape for a test demonstration. At level 70, its speed is 158. Break delay adds 25% no matter what. Under normal circumstances, this would drop the ape from its current position of 12 to 32. But Mei's specific delay during ultimate adds 20% of her own break effect, plus another 10% once you trigger rebloom. This is essentially creating a 56% delay after they've already been delayed. Mind you, that's just for Ruan Mei's specific delay on top of the regular break delay causing freeze. If you added, I don't know, Quantum or Imaginary to the mix, well, now it takes, for instance, the Ascended Lady's current place of 59 to 113, which is beneath the current cycle. She doesn't get a turn, and that's the delay before Ruan Mei triggers her rebloom ability. With enough break effect and speed synergy between your entire team, you could theoretically beat down the enemy so bad they physically can't play the game. Oh, and don't worry, a lot of you were asking me how she affects the other elements on break, and for that, I encourage you to stick around for the team section of the video. Remember Himiko? To fully understand the remainder of this guide, there's one more thing I want to bring to light. If it wasn't obvious, Ruan Mei isn't going to be one of your DPS options, but she also shouldn't be your only break unit on the team. Yes, she is crazy good at breaking, but she truly excels in performance when she is breaking alongside someone else. If I had to coin the term just for explanation purposes, Ruan Mei is like the equivalent of a sub DPS but in break form.
A mess. Where is the home I miss? Only remembered in drunken bliss.
I'm not gonna lie to you, gang, this should be the quickest part of the guide, maybe. Because Ruan Mei excels at break effect and abilities alike, your main priority should be pushing this stat to its limits. There isn't a maximum to what she's pushing back until you reach 100%. However, there is some diminishing returns in her break damage output between certain intervals. 180 is the minimum you should reach. This will give you the maximum damage buff from her talent's passive. After that, 210 is an incredibly strong number that gives you a substantial increase in damage, but just a little bit more break delay. It's not until you breach past 250 that the pushback jumps from around 40% to over 60% delay. For this reason, I highly recommend the 4-piece Thief set as her best in slot. Now at the moment, the Thief set has some slightly changed wording that insinuates it works differently than before, but as of current testing, this 4-piece effect only triggers if Ruan Mei is the breaker. After the Thief set, I'd recommend mixing a 2-piece with Messengers or a defensive set only if you already have both your break effect and speed at the minimum stats of 180 and 145 respectively. The 145 is for wearing Talia's planar ornaments, which are my preferred pair because of the big increase in break effect. With Ruan Mei's natural 37%, one of her talents giving everyone an extra 20%, the 4-piece Thief sets adding 32%, and either her signature light cone or S5 Memories of the Past adding about 60%, that sits Mei at 149 break effect without a single substat. Adding Talia's 36% pushes her to exactly 185, which is clearly above 180 and meeting your minimum break threshold. Now, if you add substats, you can easily hit that 210 or higher that I mentioned before. See, I told you it wasn't hard to get that much break effect. Now, if you aren't running Talia and choose to go for Penny or Von Quack, you don't need the 145 speed anymore, but you will need way more substats for break effect. Penny is amazing for the 5% energy regeneration, as well as pairing her up with Jing Liu. Von Quack lets you perform some really interesting combos like a turn 1 ult to get as close to possible to a 0 cycle clear. For light cones, I genuinely would only recommend 2, but I'll have the other options tabbed on the side. The first 2 are essentially a tie. I don't believe one is greater than the other due to the fact that each of them serve their own purposes, but it is possible to make one of them do the other's purpose. I can't say that for both. Past Self and Mirror and an S5 Memories of the Past. Past Self is her signature, which gives you an incredible amount of break effect, along with a quarter's worth of damage increase across the board. Not only that, but she also recovers a skill point every ultimate use with no cooldowns. Lastly is the 10 energy given immediately at the start of every wave. This is going to be great for the new Pure Fiction mode and beefier MOCs. Memories of the Past brings almost the same amount of break effect to the wearer, but no damage for the team. Instead, it provides 8 energy per attack, which falls in line perfectly with creating a 3-turn ultimate. Granted, that's if you wear Penacony or Von Quack. If you don't, then you need to get hit or score a KO. Anything beneath S5 falls out of that category and will unfortunately still give you a 4-turn ultimate. Going back to the confusing thing I mentioned earlier, her signature can achieve a 3-turn ultimate as well, just under less controlled variables. She either needs to break more than once, get hit more than once, or start a new wave in order to gain the 10 free energy. Same planar ornament conditions apply. With this, you at least get to keep your 3-turn damage bonus from the signature light cone on the same timer as your ultimate. So between the two of those, I choose the signature light cone, but that's because I personally like big boy damage. If I were in a free-to-play position and I happen to have an S5 memories, then the answer isn't even a question.
Mess. Where is the home I miss? Only remembered in drunken bliss.
Not all of you will be after her signature light cone, but for those of you who have the means to do so, I'll answer this question as honestly as I can. Her signature light cone is outstanding and one of the best in the game, but so is her E1. Her ultimate providing the team a full all-type resistance penetration against anything. With her E1 adding a 20% defense ignore on top of that, I genuinely don't think you can beat that. For maximum big dick damage, I have to recommend sniping the E1 before the signature light cone, if you already have an S5 memories of the past or close to it. The buffs from her ultimate won't matter if it takes you 5 turns to get there.
Mess. Where is the home I miss? Only remembered in drunken bliss.
Finally, we made it to the team section. I know guys, it's been a long ride so far, but if you can't tell, there's a lot to absorb and digest about Ruan Mei. The team section though, might be my favorite part. For once, I think I honestly have 0 hypercarry teams to recommend. And before the hypercarry crowd comes after my throat, hear me out. It's not that they don't or can't work. In fact, I made sure that the hypercarry Jing Liu comp got even stronger. My main issue with hypercarry here is that you are literally wasting the biggest portion of Ruan Mei's kit. Yeah, she buffs your damage upwards of 70%, but it's not just one character. She buffs the entire team's damage. Not only that, but if you're using 2 units to buff 1 unit, who is doing the breaking? The main DPS? The function is too slow. All of that said, here are my top 3 Ruan Mei centered teams. First and foremost, from the Bleach fanatic himself, is Ruan Mei, Jing Liu, Blade, and Huohuo. I guess you could replace Huohuo with Luocha, but honestly, it didn't really matter. Mei gives a substantial amount of damage buffs to both of them, while also doubling down with the Jing Liu or freezing breaks to help delay the enemy from attacking as much as possible. Blade still performs the same role from the Bronya team, but without lacking the buffs Bronya would only give to Jing Liu. In a sense, this team would perform a lot better if Blade had some priority in breaking units over added damage. In theory, a faster Blade and Ruan Mei could break down the enemies before Jing Liu strikes, allowing her to have unresisted true damage with all of her attacks. Huohuo has a perk over Luocha in this team for keeping the team CC free, while also topping off Mei with her own ult, thus giving you a 3-turn ultimate without the other conditions I mentioned earlier. Luocha has a perk over Huohuo in the fact that him and Ruan Mei together are SP positive enough that Jing Liu can always activate Bankai without worrying about running out of skill points. Next was my personal favorite, and one that I believe will become a top 3 meta team after version 2.0. That team will be Ruan Mei, Kafka, any DOT user, and Huohuo. Not only does Mei buff the team's damage across the board, but she also brings an invaluable asset to Kafka's playstyle. Her weakness break efficiency increase allows both DOT users to smash multiple enemies' toughness bar. Ruan Mei increasing the weakness break efficiency allows both DOT users to smash multiple enemies' toughness bar at once, quickly getting them to the point they will trigger a break dot, and guess who picks up the ball next? Kafka. Oh my blob. Being able to detonate the entire board full of DOTs inside of Ruan Mei's domain expansion is insane. I can only imagine what this comp will turn into once we get a dedicated DPS character that focuses on dots. Then per usual, your dot user is whatever Kool-Aid flavor the enemy likes. If it's red, pick Wanifin. Green, go Sampo. They like that weird pina colada flavored, Luca's your guy. But you could replace Luca with Sushong too. I mean, she is literally so good at breaking enemies alongside Ruan Mei that she puts out around 80% on any elite's toughness bar by herself. Once again, Popo is here for the energy top offs, consistent attack boosts, and CC control. For my last top 3 team, I will admit that I honestly couldn't make a decision. Both of these cores I'm about to mention were so smooth to play compared to their previous comps that I believe they equally fill the 3rd spot. The first team tied for 3rd place: Ruan Mei, Jingyuan, Topaz, Fu Xuan. I know you guys just heard EO say Jingyuan in the top 3, that's crazy, right? Fu Xuan is here to help prevent crowd control while buffing everyone's crit rate and raw damage. She also works wonders if you can manage to fit some break effect into her build. Somewhere around 100 to 120% before Ruan Mei's influence will help you push the board down an entire cycle thanks to her full screen ultimate. Topaz not only covers a secondary element to help the team score breaks, but because Numbi is basically an extension of Topaz, its damage is super boosted thanks to Ruan Mei's kit, the general himself. It felt so good to play him again with this much power. Lightning Lord was smacking for near 500,000 consistently. Skills were upwards of 60k on their own, and ults were well above 100,000. Then because of how brutal Lightning Lord is against enemies' toughness bar, just the slightest addition to his break effect added that much more damage. The second team to tie for 3rd place was a pseudo quantum or a mono quantum team: Ruan Mei, Zila, Shui Yi, and Fu Xuan. To be completely honest, this core could be broken down into 2 very specific units: Ruan Mei and Shui Yi. The combination of Mei's enhanced breaking and Shui Yi's colorless breaking has immense potential. Now, for those that don't know what that means, Shui Yi's ultimate can crack anyone's toughness bar regardless of its element. It naturally does about 4 units or 4 basic attacks worth of toughness bar, but inside of Mei's domain, that turns into 6. The actual number you're going to be looking for sounds like 180. Most elites have a toughness meter of about 360, which is 180 times 2. So if you just so happen to build a team that emphasized Ruan Mei's breaking potential, you could smash the enemy to smithereens in a single instance. Do you understand how broken that could be? At this point, Zila is only here to capitalize off the assistance of 2 other units breaking the enemy's toughness for her. That way, she gets her own 20% penetration against the enemy on top of Mei's plus that insane damage boost, and it's over. Ruan Mei might be one of my favorite characters in the game so far, buffing the entire team, enhancing break effects so much that you could build teams without a sustain, and basically giving debuffs to the enemy. She's like 3 characters in one. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts and opinions over on Mei and tell me how those pulls went. Me myself, I'm probably live on Twitch doing my own pulls right now with the worst of luck. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube, but if you want to see more content regarding Mei, check out one of these videos here. Smell you later.